All right, in this video, we're going to talk about some of the problems associated with bones. And the first one we're talking about are fractures or broken bones. So there are several types of fractures, as you can see here. One of the more common ones that happens in children are green stick fractures. This is an incomplete break. Happens on kind of the outside surface of the bone when it's bent. And it's like a crack in the bone. Because children's bones are not fully formed yet, they're more flexible. So we tend to get these incomplete breaks, kind of like taking a green twig and snapping and trying to snap it in half. It doesn't break. Another kind of common fracture that we see in children, much more serious, is an epiphyseal fracture, or fracture of the growth plate. This has to be treated very specific way so that the growth plate doesn't close up in the healing process. A fissured fracture is a longitudinal incomplete crack in the bone. You can see that in the picture there. A comminuted fracture is where the bone has been broken into several fragments and it's completely broken, and you would need pins and screws to put it all back together. A transverse fracture is a complete break at a right angle to the long axis of the bone. In a simple transverse fracture, the cut ends of the bone are lined up properly. It doesn't require any kind of open reduction or surgery to set the bone. It would use a closed reduction and no surgery. Oblique fracture occurs at an angle other than a right angle to the long axis. Spiral fractures are caused by twisting of the bone, and usually the broken ends will no longer be aligned, and you would have to do an open reduction surgery to reset this, put plates and pins or screws to hold it in place. A depressed fracture is like a blunt force trauma injury to the skull where the bones are pushed inward. Compression fractures cause when bones are compressed together, like in a fall where someone lands on their feet and the vertebrae make contact with each other. So how does the fracture repair itself? So there are several steps. So the first thing that happens when the bone breaks, it's going to bleed. So blood clot's going to form and it's going to connect the broken ends of the bone together. Over time, that blood clot is converted into bone tissue in a process called granulation of the hematoma, or the blood clot. This results in a mass of bone tissue connecting the broken ends together called a callus. That typically happens 4 to 6, maybe up to 8 weeks. Those first 3 steps are done. And then we have to get the bone back to what it looked like before the fracture through remodeling and reshaping the bone to its normal appearance. This can take up to a year after the fracture. Some other problems: osteopenia, inadequate ossification in adults, weaken bones, they fracture more easily. Rickets, we talked about that prior. Inadequate ossification in children. Bones become deformed because they're not rigid, and the weight of the body and the legs especially causes the bones to bend. Osteoporosis is reduction in bone mass that leads to brittle bones that fracture more easily, more common in women than men for the fact that they go through menopause.